Hi, this is Frank Furness, and thanks for watching the YouTube channel again. I'm really fortunate today. I'm with Paddy Upton, and Paddy has done some incredible things. He's taken India to being #1 in the world in cricket, and he's done the same with South Africa now. But Paddy, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you come from and your background.
Yeah, cheers Frank, nice fortuitous meeting you here in Adelaide. Yeah, really, I come from initially a sports science background, and then more recently a leadership coaching and business coaching. And I've really brought the business coaching principles around bringing the best out of teams and bringing the best out of individuals into a cricket team, and applied those same principles, and they seem to have worked quite nicely.
That's incredible. Tell us about some of the principles. What do you do maybe with the South African cricket team now that a lot of the other teams maybe aren't doing, and that we can maybe apply to business as well?
I think there's some fundamental principles that work. Things like having a really happy team, really building a nice, mature team culture, one that promotes individual learning as opposed to leader, captain or coach telling players what to do. We really encourage players to make their own decisions, to think for themselves, captain themselves on the field and off the field, with the support of the coach and the captain. We encourage guys to play to their strengths. If they're not good at something, not to spend too much time trying to get better at it, rather we ask them to spend most of their time doing what they're good at, and just getting by with the things they're not that good at. But I think that the thing is, it goes without saying, to be really professional. We don't leave any stone unturned in our preparation. Just like the language we use is, we study the whole book for the exam. So we go into a test match in 2 days' time, for example, and we are 100% prepared. That's a given almost in this professional sports environment. But what's important is that we're happy. The guys are relaxed. They're free to express themselves. They're free to make decisions, and there's no fear of making a mistake, because if something goes wrong, it's not a mistake. It's just an opportunity to have a conversation about what did we learn from that. And there's very little fear of failure, because we've got an environment that allows freedom of expression. And at the end of the road, if you're having fun and doing what you enjoy, you've got the best chance of succeeding.
No, and a lot of businesses, they don't do that. They come in and they try and tell people what to do, and they put in strict rules. Are there any big strict rules in the South African cricket team?
We pride ourselves, for the last year, we haven't had one single rule. We don't have any fine system, and we haven't had a single incident where someone needed to be fined, someone needed to be pulled in. In fact, we haven't had one single incident in a year of any conflict, which might sound bizarre when you've got 15 people from very different backgrounds, different ages, living with each other 10 months a year, 24 hours a day, in the same bus, the same team room, in the same hotel. But we've just got an environment that's sufficiently mature that people take responsibility for this environment working. If guys are out at 3 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock in the morning on their way home, there isn't a policeman like a coach or captain to say, don't go in there. We expect one of the players, if a guy wants to turn in and go and have an extra beer, to say, actually, hang on, leave it, let's go home and get some sleep. So the players look after the environment, and they take pride in it being such a high performance and enjoyable environment that themselves don't want to damage it, so it doesn't need to be policed. The funny thing is, when you treat an adult as an adult and maturely, they tend to behave like adults.
And the interesting thing is, I mean, what they're doing with the South African team, and that you did with India as well, is you don't just have your normal coach. You've almost got a mental coach, and that's what you are. You brought it in, and you're bringing fun to the game. You're bringing a team spirit. Is that what you would say you do with the team? You actually mix them and meld them together?
Listen, at the highest level of sports, everyone will say that the mental side is the most important. And yes, I tend to the mental side. That's one of my main portfolio within the team. But I don't do very little one-on-one sports psychology with the guys, because what I've found is the better the environment, the more players know what their role is, the more free they are out of fear of failure, the less I'm actually having to work with somebody, because their mind's already in a good space. So I found that through the leadership, which is pretty much, I do most of my work with a captain and with a coach, because they're the guys who drive the environment. And if they're driving a really healthy environment, it leaves a lot less work for me to do, because I don't have to have a guy come to me with confusion or a bit of a fear or concerns or doubt or insecurities, because the environment is such that all of those things, it grows a healthy mental environment. So the better the space is the better the team culture is, the less one-on-one work there is for me to do with an individual.
And you said an interesting thing the other day. You said only about half the practices are compulsory. The other half is where they come and they work on what they want to work on. How does that work?
Well, again, the traditional model in sport coaching is the coach decides when the team practices, what time they practice, and the coach will say, right, we're going to start with this, and then we move to some fielding, and then after that we'll run around the field and jump up and down 5 times, and then we go home at 5 o'clock. Now, using that model, the assumption is that the coach knows best about what the players need to do to prepare themselves. And we're saying that's fundamentally flawed, in that the players need to take responsibility for what they need to do to get themselves prepared for the game. And different people have different needs. So by saying we have optional practices, the player needs to think through, what is the opposition saying about me? They need to think through their own game. They need to think through the conditions. They need to be clear on their strategy. And with that information, then they need to decide, is there anything that I need to do to get me more prepared or better prepared for the weekend's game? And then they'll go to decide, well, then do I need to go to practice or not? And if they're fully prepared, it's really empowering for them to know for themselves that, no, I'm ready to play. And if there's a small thing they need to go and work on, then they go and work on that. And even if they come to an optional practice, we will often ask them, so why are you here? What is it that you're wanting to do? What elements of your game do you want to upskill? And then once they've completed that and they decide, now I'm ready for the game, there isn't a 5 o'clock bus. It's when you're finished, pack your bags and go home because you're done. So we're more and more transferring the responsibility for preparation onto the individual. Because why? In the heat of battle, on the field, we're saying to players, we want you to make good decisions. In fact, we don't want, you have to make the decision for yourself. Now, our guys practice cover drives all week. But how much practice are we giving our players or our staff, or how much practice are we giving them at making good decisions? Because you can't expect someone to make a good decision in the heat of battle if they haven't had the opportunity and the freedom to practice making decisions before the time. So again, it makes sense. If you practice your cover drive, you've got to practice making decisions. So we create those opportunities as much as possible.
Now, again, Paddy's come from an incredible background because you started off as a fitness coach, didn't you, with the South African team? When was that?
Back in the 90s, 94 to 98.
So you did that, and then you moved into business after that, and then came back into with the India. Is that right? So
yeah, you know, as a sports scientist and a fitness trainer, I was only working with the body, and it didn't take long for me to realize that the body and the mind and the emotions and the skill don't work as separate entities. Actually, the thing that unifies everything we do is the mind or emotions. So even the work that I do now, if someone is unfit, it might be that they need extra training from a fitness trainer, but it might be a 15-minute conversation for me to help them shift their thinking around fitness. That automatically translates into them then wanting to get up and do the work. So for me, having gone through the physical side and now arriving at working with the mental side, it really pulls everything together. That if we're in a good space mentally, everything else just flows from there.
now it must be quite interesting because you also work with the IPL and the India League, where you've got people from all over the world, the biggest egos ever, coming together. What is that like for you to work on getting all of these different cricketers from all over, the egos coming into it, and how do you meld that together as a team?
I guess one of the key pieces that I would use there is my ears. It's good to do a lot more listening and a lot less talking when you've got people like that. But then also the process that I really use there is when you've got a whole lot of experts, and it might be in an IPL cricket team or it might be in a business team that you pull together, the project team. One model is where the coach or the captain or the manager tells everyone what to do. The other model is to say, well, there's a whole lot of expertise sitting in this room. Why don't you guys have this conversation, bring all of your expertise, and let's see if we can find some common strategy from all of your best thinking rather than me imposing my best thinking onto you. So I think that's a model that's the only model that really can work in an IPL team, is that you use the collective information intelligence from players from 6 or 7 different countries, each getting input from 6 or 7 different coaches and 6 or 7 different captains. So the amount of expertise you have in a room is incredible. And I think it will be limited by having an instruction or dictatorial-based coaching approach, as opposed to a facilitative approach where the knowledge comes rather than from within one individual, but from within the group.
Now, the great thing is, I mean, Paddy's doing all of this in sport, but you also worked in business for a long time. So how can you take some of the principles of what you're applying to really have created the best cricket team in the world? You did that with India, you're doing that with South Africa. What can business leaders learn from you and the kind of principles that you're putting in there?
Well, Frank, the principles that I'm applying in sport now, I've actually borrowed from business.
Right, so, you've got to get back again.
So we're really grateful that business have loaned us these ideas around coaching and leadership and teamwork and optimizing performance. But they're translatable directly back into business. And as we were talking about earlier at dinner this evening, that we're living in a fascinating period now where there really is a fundamental shift in leadership and man management. And most leaders who 40 years old plus, for example, are leading with an old model, but most of the workforce and the players that I work with are expecting and wanting and flourish much better under the new model of leadership and man management. So yesterday's, or leaders leading with yesterday's command and control or instruction based or ego-based leadership, if I can be so bold as to use that term, they are going to not get the best out of their team, not get the best out of individuals, and in the competitive world that we live in today, they're going to get spat out the system at some point or another. So someone who's seeking high performance, wanting to get the best out of people and the best out of teams, need to be stepping into what the new leadership and man management philosophies and approach that's already in existence out there in the world, but I think there's too many companies and businesses that are still basing their approach on an older model, and they're going to get found out.
I mean, I do a lot of speaking on social media, and a lot of the leaders I speak to are saying, no, people don't do that anymore, we still do it by the handshake, but that's not their new audience, and unless they change, their business is going to be stagnant.
Yeah.
Now, Paddy, you also do some talks and motivational talking and that kind of thing around the world, so if any companies want to get hold of you, if you ever have any time off, where's the best place, what's the best website to get hold of you at?
They can get me at my website, paddyupton.com.
Okay, and just follow the link below. You'll see a link directly to Paddy's website. Click on that, and thanks so much for your time, and good luck with the rest of the cricket series.
Cheers. Thank you, Frank. Thanks very much.